The call came while I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room. My daughter's voice was cold, detached. "We're leaving for Europe tomorrow, Mom. I sold the beach house and your car. We needed the money. Goodbye." Just like that. 45 years of love, of sacrifice, discarded in a single, heartless phone call. But as I sat there, surrounded by the sterile smell of antiseptic and the quiet murmurs of other patients, I didn't cry. Instead, I took a deep breath and smiled. There was something my dear daughter didn't know. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 72 years old. And in that moment, a strange calm settled over me. My husband, Arthur, had passed away 6 months earlier. Since then, my daughter, Clara, had been a constant presence, or so I'd believed. She helped with the funeral, brought groceries, insisted I see a doctor. "You need to take care of yourself now that you're alone, Mom," she'd say with a smile I once mistook for love. Now I understood it was merely convenience. The beach house had been our family's heart, bought with years of sacrifice. Every summer, every holiday was spent there, building a lifetime of memories. And the car, Arthur's beloved vintage truck, was the last place his scent still lingered. She knew what it meant to me. Yet, she sold it all without a second thought. As I left the doctor's office with a clean bill of health, my mind wasn't on the diagnosis. It was on a manila envelope. 3 days before his heart attack, Arthur had pressed it into my hands. "Eleanor, keep this in your dresser drawer. If anything happens to me, open it when you feel ready." Grief had made me forget, but Clara's betrayal jolted the memory back. On the bus ride home, a sense of poetic justice washed over me. My daughter thought she had left me with nothing, but Arthur, my brilliant, thoughtful Arthur, had always been a planner. The house was quiet when I arrived, filled with the shadows of our life together. I went straight to the bedroom, my hands trembling as I opened the drawer. There it was. I sat on the edge of the bed we'd shared for decades and slowly opened the envelope. Inside, I found my future. Legal documents, property deeds, bank statements with staggering balances, and a handwritten letter that would change everything. "My dearest Eleanor," it began, "if you are reading this, I am no longer with you. Forgive my secrecy, but I wanted to protect you from worry." The letter continued, revealing a truth that stole my breath. Arthur hadn't just been a dedicated accountant for 40 years, he'd been a shrewd, silent investor. Every penny we'd saved, every small sacrifice we'd made, he had multiplied with astonishing foresight. We didn't just own the beach house. We owned 6 other properties, including the very apartment building where Clara and her husband, Mark, lived. We held shares in thriving companies. Arthur explained his reasoning with heartbreaking clarity. Our Clara, if she knew our true worth, her love might become conditional. "I want her to love us for who we are, not what we have." The irony was a physical blow. Our daughter had discarded us, believing we were a financial burden, when in reality, she was living in a building I secretly owned. That night, I didn't sleep. I wandered through our home, touching the familiar furniture, looking at photos of a smiling little girl who had somehow become this stranger. The game was far from over, and Arthur had just handed me the winning hand. Did this twist surprise you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more incredible life stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The next morning, Clara called again. Her voice was softer now, laced with a false concern that made my skin crawl. "Mom, we transferred the money from the house and car. We deposited your share into your account. It should help for a few months while you find a smaller place." "My share?" I kept my voice calm, a skill honed over decades. "Yes, Mom. We gave you 30%. That's fair, right? We need the capital for Mark's business venture in Europe. 30% of my own possessions." The audacity was breathtaking. She spoke of their trip, their plans, their new life, all funded by her theft. "When we get back," she said with unbearable condescension, "we'll help you find a nice little apartment. Something more suited to your needs." I thanked her and wished her a safe trip. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I laughed. I laughed until tears streamed down my face at the sheer, tragic comedy of it all. She had no idea that the nice little apartment she envisioned for me was a fantasy. I was the landlord of her entire world, and she was about to learn the true meaning of consequences. From my window, I watched them leave. Clara and Mark loaded their luxurious suitcases into a taxi, laughing without a care. They never looked back at my window, never offered a final goodbye. As the taxi disappeared, I sat at my kitchen table, Arthur's documents spread before me. I knew what I had to do. I called Mr. Henderson, the lawyer who had handled Arthur's affairs. His voice was warm and professional. "Mrs. Vance, how can I help?" I explained I had found some documents I didn't fully understand and needed to see him urgently. We scheduled a meeting for the next morning. For the first time in months, I slept soundly, dreaming of Arthur. He was in his favorite armchair, and he looked at me with that knowing smile. "It's time, my love," he said in the dream. "It's time you stood up for yourself." I woke not with sadness, but with a fierce, burning determination. I dressed carefully the next day, putting on the emerald green dress Arthur always loved. Staring into the mirror, I didn't see a vulnerable widow. I saw a formidable woman ready to reclaim her life. Mr. Henderson's office was all polished wood and quiet efficiency. His friendly demeanor shifted to one of profound shock as he reviewed the documents. "Eleanor, this is extraordinary. Arthur was a visionary. According to this, you are the sole beneficiary of a considerable portfolio." He confirmed everything. The sale of the beach house was illegal. Clara had no legal right. "We can have the property returned immediately and file fraud charges," he stated firmly. But I shook my head. "No, Mr. Henderson. I don't want charges. Not yet. I want it all back, but I want it done quietly. I need to gain full control of all the assets, especially that apartment building, and I need complete secrecy." He studied me, curiosity gleaming in his eyes, then nodded. "Of course. You are the client. We will proceed exactly as you wish." Leaving his office, I felt a new energy coursing through me. The city outside buzzed with its normal rhythm, but my world had been fundamentally altered. I was no longer a victim. I was the architect of a new reality, and my first blueprint was for silent, absolute reclamation. The following weeks were a masterclass in duality. To the outside world, I remained Eleanor Vance, the pitted widow abandoned by her ungrateful daughter. My neighbors, like dear Mrs. Wilkins, would offer condolences and casseroles, their eyes full of sympathy for my supposed poverty. "How will you manage, Eleanor?" she'd ask. I'd simply smile and say, "I'll find a way." Meanwhile, in the shadows, I was a woman of immense means and quiet power. Mr. Henderson worked meticulously, his updates a quiet drumbeat of progress. He called one Wednesday with triumphant news. "The beach house is yours again, Eleanor. The sale has been nullified. The buyers were refunded, they were unaware of the fraud." A wave of relief washed over me. One piece of my heart was restored. The apartment building, however, was a more complex affair, requiring subtle corporate maneuvering to place direct control in my hands. 2 more weeks, Mr. Henderson assured me. I was in no rush. I was learning to appreciate the slow, deliberate unfolding of a perfectly laid plan. I decided to visit the beach house. The bus ride was a pilgrimage through my own memories. When I arrived, I sat on the curb across the street, simply watching. It stood there, a cream-colored sanctuary against the blue vastness of the ocean, exactly as we had left it. A man tending the garden noticed me and approached. "Lovely place, isn't it?" he said. "We thought we got a steal, but the sale fell through. The daughter handled it all, said her mother was too ill." My blood ran cold at the lie. Clara had not only stolen from me, she had painted me as a feeble, helpless invalid to justify her actions. To her, I wasn't a person with a history and feelings, but an obstacle to be removed. I offered him a sympathetic smile. "What a shame. I'm glad you didn't lose your investment. As I walked away, my resolve hardened into something unbreakable. This wasn't just about assets anymore. It was about dignity. It was about forcing my daughter to see the real, living woman she had so carelessly betrayed. My new routine was a strange dance between two lives. By day, I was the unassuming widow, navigating the supermarket aisles and accepting the pitying glances. But in the quiet of my home, I became a strategist, studying financial reports and property valuations. I discovered Arthur's genius was in his foresight. Every investment was in an area poised for growth. The most revealing discovery, however, was about Mark. Mr. Henderson uncovered that my son-in-law was drowning in debt. He had taken out substantial loans using their apartment as collateral, completely unaware that he did not own it. The banks were starting to circle, and when they discovered the truth, his house of cards would collapse. This was the first domino to fall in the chain of consequences I had set in motion. Clara had thrown her lot in with a conman, and the ground was crumbling beneath their European fantasy. I felt no joy, only a cold certainty that the reckoning I had planned was now inevitable. Mr. Henderson's call came on a crisp Friday morning. "Eleanor, it's done. All the legal transfers are complete. You now have direct, unequivocal control over every asset, including the apartment building. And," he added with a note of triumph, "I've recovered Arthur's truck." The buyer was understanding once the situation was explained. A profound sense of closure settled over me. The physical remnants of my life with Arthur were returning home. But one final piece remained. "Now, Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice steady. "I need you to send a letter to my daughter." There was a pause on the line. "What kind of letter?" he asked cautiously. "An eviction notice," I replied. "Give her the standard 30 days to vacate the premises." The silence stretched. "Eleanor, are you absolutely certain?" "Completely," I said. She made her choices with cold calculation. Now it's time for her to understand the weight of them. I had a feeling she would be receiving it very soon. The neighborhood gossip network, expertly operated by my dear friend Mrs. Wilkins, soon delivered the news I'd been anticipating. "Eleanor," she exclaimed, arriving at my door with fresh-baked bread. "You'll never believe it. Your Clara is coming back from Europe, and alone. My nephew at the bank says Mark is in serious trouble over some fraudulent loans." She leaned in conspiratorially. "Apparently, there never was any real business in Europe. It was all a scheme to escape his creditors here." I maintained my mask of concerned surprise, though internally I marveled at how perfectly Arthur's plan was unfolding. Clara had sacrificed everything for a man who saw her only as a means to an end. Now she was returning to face the consequences alone, just as I had been left alone after Arthur's passing. The poetic justice was almost overwhelming. That evening, I sat on my porch watching the stars emerge, feeling Arthur's presence in the gentle night breeze. He had built this safety net not just with money, but with profound understanding of human nature. He knew our daughter would need to fall before she could truly learn to stand on her own, and he had entrusted me with the difficult task of catching her, but only after she'd hit bottom. Clara returned on a Tuesday, and the neighborhood watch, led by the ever-vigilant Mrs. Wilkins, reported her arrival immediately. "She looked dreadful, Eleanor," Mrs. Wilkins confided. "Pale, thin, and all alone. And when she reached her building, she didn't even have her keys. The superintendent had to let her in." The eviction notice arrived the next day, delivered by certified mail. Mr. Henderson confirmed its receipt. "The doorman signed for it personally," he told me. "Eleanor, I must ask once more, are you prepared for what comes next? She is your daughter, after all." My response was firm. She stopped being just my daughter when she treated me as disposable. "This isn't revenge, Mr. Henderson. This is education." The morning after the notice arrived, my phone rang at precisely 8 a.m. Clara's voice was raw with panic. "Mom? Mom, something terrible has happened. I got this letter, an eviction notice. It must be a mistake, right? It's from some company called Arthur Holdings Limited. Do you know anything about this? I allowed just the right amount of confusion to color my voice. An eviction? How strange, darling. I've never heard of that company. The trap was set, and she was walking right into it. What would you do if you were in Eleanor's position? Share your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to subscribe for more gripping stories about family, justice, and second chances. Clara arrived at my house within the hour, her appearance shocking even my prepared heart. The confident woman who had left for Europe was gone, replaced by a fragile, trembling shadow of herself. Her expensive clothes hung loosely, and dark circles framed her tired eyes. "Mom," she whispered, hovering at the doorway as if unsure of her welcome. I invited her in, maintaining my carefully constructed facade of concerned mother. Over coffee at the kitchen table, the same table where I had first uncovered Arthur's life-changing documents, her story spilled out in broken fragments. Edward had abandoned her in Paris for a younger woman. The European business venture was entirely fictitious, an elaborate scheme to access the money from selling my properties. Worse yet, she discovered he had forged her signature on loan documents, leaving her responsible for massive debts she never knew existed. "He used me, Mom," she sobbed, genuine tears of despair streaming down her face. "I sacrificed everything for him, my family, my integrity, everything, and he threw me away like yesterday's news." In that moment, seeing her raw pain, the mother in me wanted to comfort her, to reveal the truth and wipe away all her troubles. But I remembered the cold finality of her phone call from the doctor's office, the way she had reduced 45 years of motherhood to a financial transaction. She needed to understand the full weight of consequences before she could appreciate any salvation. The ultimate test came when Clara, through her tears, made the request I had been anticipating. "Mom," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I know I have no right to ask this, but could I stay with you? Just until I can find a job and get back on my feet?" The irony was so profound it threatened to crack my carefully maintained composure. After systematically dismantling my life, after treating me as a burden to be managed, she was now seeking refuge in the very home she had tried to push me out of. I looked at my daughter, truly looked at her, and saw not just the woman who had betrayed me, but the little girl I had comforted through nightmares and scraped knees. "Of course, this will always be your home," I said, my voice gentle but devoid of the unconditional warmth she might have expected. Her relief was palpable as she embraced me, a desperate, clinging hug that I returned with calculated restraint. This wasn't forgiveness, this was strategy. Having her live with me provided the perfect opportunity for the next phase of her education. She would settle in, feel temporarily secure, and begin to believe she had found safe harbor from the storm she had helped create. Little did she know that the most important lessons were yet to come, and that true safety can only be found when one learns to build their own foundations rather than relying on others to provide shelter from life's inevitable consequences. Clara moved back into her childhood room the next day, her 2 suitcases and single cardboard box a stark contrast to the luxurious life she had so recently abandoned. I watched her unpack, each movement heavy with the humiliation of her reduced circumstances. It was during this process that she made a discovery that would test my acting skills to their limit. "Mom," she said, emerging from her room with a familiar manila envelope in her hands. "I found this tucked away in my old closet. It has your name on it." My heart stuttered as I recognized Arthur's distinctive handwriting on the second envelope, the one he had mentioned in his main letter as being reserved for "when Clara is truly ready." Maintaining my composure, I opened it with feigned curiosity. Inside lay a small, unassuming key and a brief note that read, "My Eleanor, if you are reading this with our daughter, it means she has returned home in need. This key opens Safety Deposit Box 347 at Central Trust Bank. What you find there may help her find her way back, but use it wisely. With all my love, Arthur." Clara's eyes widened with desperate hope as she read the note over my shoulder. A safety deposit box? "Mom, this could be the answer. There might be something valuable inside that could help with my debts." I hesitated artfully, letting her desperation build before finally agreeing we would visit the bank the next day. That evening, over a dinner she cooked in a transparent attempt to be useful, Clara revealed more devastating details about Edward's deception, forged signatures, secret loans exceeding $150,000, and his ultimate disappearance. Each confession reinforced my conviction that my difficult plan was necessary. She needed to understand that rescue, when it came, must be earned through genuine growth, not simply granted because she had found another financial lifeline. The bank visit the next day felt like a scene from one of those dramatic films Arthur and I used to enjoy on Friday nights. Clara's nervous energy filled the car as we drove downtown, her hope so palpable it almost had its own presence. The bank manager led us to the vault with proper solemnity, and when box 347 clicked open, we found Arthur's final surprise, a collection of family heirlooms and jewelry whose combined value the accompanying appraisal estimated at nearly $200,000. Clara gasped, her hands trembling as she lifted a pearl necklace that had belonged to my mother. "Mom," she breathed, "this is a fortune. We could sell some pieces, you could get your beach house back, and I could pay off Edward's most urgent debts." Her immediate leap to monetizing our family history pained me deeply. Even when presented with tangible pieces of our shared heritage, her first instinct remained transactional. "Are you certain you want to use your father's inheritance to clean up Edward's mess?" I asked, carefully modulating my voice to sound concerned rather than judgmental. "What choice do I have?" she replied, her desperation overriding any sentimental attachment to the jewels. "If I don't pay something soon, the banks will destroy what little I have left." We took the treasures home, and I watched with a heavy heart as she spent the afternoon researching jewelers and calculating potential returns, reducing decades of family memory to columns in a spreadsheet. This, I realized, was the core of the problem Clara needed to solve, understanding that some values can't be quantified, that true wealth has nothing to do with bank balances and everything to do with the legacy we build and the relationships we nurture through good times and bad. Over the following days, I observed a subtle but significant transformation in Clara. The woman who had once casually sold my possessions without consultation was now meticulously researching every financial decision, comparing offers from multiple jewelers, and creating detailed budgets for the debt repayment. Hardship was teaching her the responsibility that privilege never could. She eventually secured $185,000 for the jewels, keeping only my wedding ring and her grandmother's locket. "It's enough to cover the most pressing debts," she told me, spreading the cashier's checks on the kitchen table with a mixture of relief and regret. Meanwhile, Mr. Henderson delivered crucial news. His investigators had located Edward in Paris, attempting to secure French residency through a fraudulent marriage. More importantly, they had gathered definitive evidence that he had forged Clara's signature on loan documents without her knowledge. "We can clear her name of all these debts," Mr. Henderson explained. "The evidence of fraud is incontrovertible." I instructed him to begin the legal process immediately but to maintain secrecy. Clara's education needed to reach its natural conclusion. During this period, she secured a night job cleaning offices, work she would have once considered beneath her. When she returned home exhausted after her first shift, she shared wisdom from an older coworker. She said there are two types of people doing this job, those who never had opportunities, and those who ruined the opportunities they had. Clara looked at me with newfound clarity. I told her I was in the second group, Mom. For the first time, I'm taking full responsibility for where I am. This was the breakthrough I had been waiting for, not a desperate plea for rescue, but a sober acknowledgement of accountability. The morning of our meeting with Mr. Henderson arrived, and Clara dressed in her best remaining outfit, which now hung loosely on her thinner frame. Her nervousness was palpable during our drive downtown. "Mom, I hope this lawyer has some solution, but I'm terrified of what it might cost," she fretted. Mr. Henderson greeted us with professional warmth and immediately presented Clara with a thick folder of documents. As she read, her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "I don't understand, these say Edward committed identity fraud, that I'm not responsible for the debts. But who paid for this investigation?" Mr. Henderson looked to me, and I knew the moment of revelation had arrived. "Clara," I began, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart, "your father left us more than you could possibly imagine." Mr. Henderson then presented the second folder, the one containing the property deeds, the bank statements, the investment portfolios. The complete picture of the fortune Arthur had quietly built. Clara's hands trembled as she turned the pages, her eyes widening with each new revelation. You own my apartment building? You've known this entire time? While I was cleaning offices and selling family heirlooms? The questions tumbled out, laced with shock and burgeoning understanding. Why, Mom? Why let me suffer when you could have helped me immediately? I met her gaze directly. Because you needed to learn what money could never teach you, the value of what you so carelessly discarded. The silence in Mr. Henderson's office stretched, thick with unspoken emotions. Clara stared at the documents, then at me, her eyes swimming with tears not of self-pity, but of profound realization. You knew, she whispered. You knew everything when I came back crying, when I took that cleaning job, when I sold Grandma's jewels. I knew, I confirmed softly. And I watched you struggle because I love you too much to let you remain the person who could do what you did to me. Clara closed the folders, her hands resting on them as if trying to absorb their truth through touch. You wanted me to hit rock bottom, she stated, not as an accusation, but as a dawning comprehension. I needed you to find your own way back up, I replied. Mr. Henderson quietly explained that the legal process to absolve her of Edward's debts was nearly complete, fully funded by me. Clara listened, but her attention remained fixed on me. The cleaning job, she said finally. You could make me quit now. I could, I acknowledged. But I hope you don't. That job is teaching you something I could never give you, the dignity of your own effort, the value of earning your way. She nodded slowly, a new respect in her eyes, not the conditional respect given to wealth, but the earned respect between two equals who had weathered the same storm. In the weeks that followed, our relationship transformed into something entirely new and beautiful. Clara continued her cleaning job, not as punishment, but as personal commitment. I need to finish what I started, Mom, she told me one evening as she prepared for work. I can't just return to a life of comfort as if nothing happened. I watched her with immense pride as she developed friendships with her coworkers, even using her modest earnings to help a colleague struggling with childcare costs. She had discovered that true abundance lies not in what we possess, but in what we can give to others. Meanwhile, Mr. Henderson successfully cleared her name from all of Edward's fraudulent debts, using the evidence of forgery and coercion he had gathered. Edward himself was arrested in France for marriage fraud, facing deportation proceedings. When Clara learned this news, she displayed remarkable equanimity. That part of my life is over, she stated with quiet finality. He actually did me a favor by forcing me to hit bottom. Without that, I never would have learned to appreciate what truly matters. She began taking classes in social work, determined to use her painful experience to help other women facing similar crises. Our dinner conversations shifted from survival strategies to meaningful discussions about compassion, service, and building a legacy of genuine worth. 6 months later, our lives had settled into a rhythm richer than anything we had known before. Clara excelled in her social work program while continuing her part-time job, paying her own tuition through careful saving. I need to do this on my own, Mom, she insisted whenever I offered financial help. It's part of who I am now. Together, we established the Arthur Vance Foundation, using a portion of the resources Arthur had left to support women escaping domestic violence and financial abuse. Our first major project was perhaps our most meaningful transformation of all. One sunny Sunday, we drove Arthur's restored truck to the beach house, the first time Clara had returned since her betrayal. She stood silently for a long moment, taking in the familiar cream-colored facade and the ocean beyond. Mom, she said, her voice thick with emotion, I want to apologize properly for this house. Not just for selling it, but for failing to see that it was never about property value. This was where Dad taught me to swim, where you taught me to bake, where we celebrated every important moment. Then she proposed the perfect redemption, let's turn it into a transitional home for women rebuilding their lives, a place where they can heal surrounded by the same love that built our family here. I felt Arthur's approving presence so strongly in that moment that tears finally came, not tears of grief, but of profound completion. The transformation of our beach house into Arthur's Haven became Clara's passionate mission. She managed the renovations with careful attention, preserving the family memories while creating a safe, welcoming space for up to 4 families at a time. She interviewed the first residents herself, women whose stories mirrored her own journey of betrayal and rediscovery. I watched with awe as my daughter drew from her painful experience to offer genuine empathy and practical guidance. "You're not starting over," I heard her tell one young mother, "you're starting wiser." Meanwhile, our home life blossomed into a partnership of mutual respect. Clara contributed financially to household expenses from her social work salary, not because she needed to, but because she valued the dignity of contribution. Our evening conversations on the porch became treasured rituals where we shared insights from our days and planned the Foundation's future initiatives. Mrs. Wilkins, our ever-perceptive neighbor, captured the transformation perfectly during one of her weekly visits. "Eleanor, I must admit I thought you were being too harsh at first. But looking at Clara now, she carries herself with a strength that comes from having rebuilt herself from the ground up. You didn't just give her back her life, you gave her a life worth living." Her words confirmed that the difficult path I had chosen, though painful, had been the right one all along. A year after Clara's return, we hosted a small gathering at Arthur's Haven to celebrate the Foundation's impact. Former residents shared stories of their fresh starts, new jobs, reunited families, rediscovered self-worth. Clara stood to speak, her voice clear and strong. "This house was once my family's sanctuary," she began, "until I lost sight of its true value. But sometimes we need to lose things to understand their worth. My father's greatest gift wasn't the wealth he accumulated, but the wisdom to know that true security comes from within. And my mother's greatest gift was loving me enough to let me discover that truth for myself." Later that evening, as we watched the sunset from the porch Arthur built, Clara shared one final revelation. "Mom, I received a letter from Edward today. He's being deported back to face charges here." She paused, her gaze steady. "And you know what I felt? Nothing. No anger, no bitterness. Just gratitude that his betrayal led me back to myself, and back to you." I reached for her hand, overwhelmed by the completeness of our journey. The desperate daughter who had returned to me broken had transformed into a woman of profound strength and compassion. Arthur's plan had worked perfectly, not through immediate rescue, but through patient, difficult love that allowed for genuine transformation. We had both gained something far more valuable than any financial inheritance, an authentic relationship built on hard-won mutual respect and the unshakable knowledge that we had chosen each other, not out of obligation, but out of genuine love and shared purpose. Today, as I walk through the gardens at Arthur's Haven, watching Clara laugh with a young mother and her children, I feel a peace that transcends understanding. The journey here was paved with painful choices and difficult lessons, but every step was necessary. Clara recently completed her master's degree in social work, paid for with her own hard-earned savings. "It means more this way," she told me, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "Our foundation has helped over 50 women and families find their footing, each story a testament to the resilience of the human spirit." The vintage truck sits in our driveway, a daily reminder of Arthur's enduring presence in our lives. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, I still speak to him. "We did it, my love," I whisper to the stars. "Our daughter learned what truly matters." And in the deep stillness, I feel his answer, "You were both stronger than you knew." Justice arrived not as revenge, but as redemption. Not as punishment, but as transformation. The wealth Arthur left behind became a tool for healing, but the real inheritance was the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter who chose to rebuild their relationship from the foundation up. We learned that the greatest fortunes aren't measured in bank statements, but in the love we share, the lessons we learn, and the lives we touch along the way.